Oasis Audio presents For Men Only, Revised and Updated Edition by Shaunti and Jeff Feldhahn, read for you by Jeff Feldhahn. Chapter 1, Rethinking Random, Why You Need a New Map of the Female Universe. Like some guys I know, you might be tempted to skip this introduction and jump right to the sex chapter. And if you're chuckling right now, it probably means that you already did, or were about to. It's not a bad choice, actually, just a little self-defeating. If you've been around in a committed relationship with a woman for more than, say, a day, you know that going just for what you want isn't actually going to get you what you want for very long. A week? Maybe. But let's be honest, one of the main reasons you're looking at this book is because you're trying to get something you want. Not sex, well, not just sex, but a more fulfilling, harmonious relationship with your wife. One that isn't quite so hard or confusing. And the back cover gave you the wild idea that understanding her might actually be possible. Either that, or for some reason the woman in question just handed you this book. Well, either way, take a look at the revelations we've uncovered. We think you'll be convinced. Each chapter explains things about the woman you love that may have often left you feeling helpless, confused, or just plain angry. Each chapter points out simple, doable solutions. The only genius required is that you make a decision up front that you're willing to think differently. This is a short book, but if you read it cover to cover, you'll walk away with your eyes open to things you may never before have understood about your wife or girlfriend. That's what happened with me. And I'm just your average semi-confused guy. Actually, sometimes totally confused is more accurate. And since we average semi-confused guys have to stick together, that's why, even though Shaunti and I are both authoring this book, I'll be the one doing the talking. First, some background. In 2004, Shaunti published For Women Only, What You Need to Know About the Inner Lives of Men, which quickly became a bestseller. Based on nationally representative surveys, focus groups, personal interviews, and other research with thousands of men, it opened women's eyes to the things most of us guys had always wished our wife or girlfriend knew. Things like, most of us need to feel respected even more than loved. Or that besides just getting enough sex, we also have a huge need to feel sexually desired by our wives. I'm not sure exactly why, but women everywhere were shocked. And by the flood of letters from around the country from both women and their grateful husbands, Shaunti and I have seen how much good can come when the opposite sex finally has their eyes open to things they simply didn't understand before. In this book, the shock is on the other foot. Now it's their turn to exclaim to us, "I can't believe you didn't already know that." When Shaunti's publisher first approached us about doing a companion book to For Women Only to help men understand women, I had two major concerns. First, I didn't think guys would read a relationship book. For most of us, the last relationship book we read was in premarital counseling, and then only because we were forced to. But more to the point, I doubted that women could ever be understood. Compared to other complex matters like the tides, say, or how to figure a baseball pitcher's ERA, women seemed unknowable, random even. I explained my skepticism to one early focus group of women. Me. Guys tend to think that women are random. We think, I pulled this lever last week and got a certain reaction, but when I pulled the same lever this week, I got a totally different reaction. That's random. Women in the group. But we aren't random. If you pull the lever and got a different reaction, either you're pulling a different lever or you're pulling it in a different way. Shaunti, what men need is a sort of map to their wives or girlfriends, because we can be mapped. We can be known and understood. Firm ground. Me. Oh, no. See, guys think of women as a swamp. You can't see where you're stepping, and sooner or later you just know that you're going to get stuck in quicksand. And the more you struggle to get free, the deeper you get sucked in. So every guy on the planet knows that the best thing to do is to just shut down and not struggle and hope somebody comes along to rescue you. When I came to, Shaunti and the other women in the focus group assured me, and I have since seen for myself, that guys don't have to live in a swamp. That realization led us to the eventual subtitle of this book, a straightforward guide to the inner lives of women. We've been astounded and humbled at the reaction to these simple, eye-opening truths. In fact, the book you're listening to is actually the second edition of this book, which was needed because there was clearly a desire for this ongoing research. Both For Women Only and For Men Only sparked a huge wave of encouragement and hope among ordinary men and women just like me and Shaunti, selling 2 million copies in 22 languages. We were flooded with emails and comments from men and women at our marriage conferences saying things like, "This saved my marriage, and after 10 years together, I finally know how to make my wife happy," and even, "Jeff, I owe you one, buddy." But since we've continued to learn new things, we also wanted to keep the book current. For this new edition, we've included some fascinating new findings, including the brain science behind why women sometimes think as they do. Plus, we've added a new chapter, The Reason Hiding in Her Unreasonable Reaction, that decodes those unpredictable reactions that she thinks of as, normal. After seeing the impact of this research, I realized that we really did uncover life-changing insights, surprising truths that average guys like me need to hear from an average guy, and be encouraged that if someone like me can learn it and do it, they can too. The 7 revelations. So let's go back to the swamp, the one we think is there but doesn't really exist. The most important key to de-swamping the woman in your life is to realize that some of your basic assumptions about her may be either too simplistic or flat wrong. By simplistic, I mean that we tend to operate with a partial or surface understanding of our wife or girlfriend. And to make matters worse, most guys have no idea how to make their limited understanding work in actual practice. For example, most guys have heard that women want security. Okay, but what does that mean exactly? A regular paycheck? A big house? It's a shocker to talk to hundreds of women and find that while financial security is nice, it isn't nearly as important to them as feeling emotionally secure, feeling close and confident that you'll be there for her no matter what. And believe it or not, ensuring emotional security turns out to be a whole lot easier than ensuring the financial security that you're probably busting your tail to provide. For Men Only will help you move from surface understandings to the all-important recognition of what those things mean in everyday life with your woman. Once you start testing out these findings, you'll be amazed at the difference it makes for both of you because, brace yourself, you will realize that you can understand your wife and make her happy. Sound wildly impossible? I'll go one better. You'll see that this huge shift can happen for you and the woman you love, even if it starts out as a totally one-sided effort on your part. The second edition of For Men Only is organized around 7 major findings. Some of these will be surprises to you, some won't, at least to begin with. But that's the thing about swamps. What you see is rarely what is really there. Let's take a look at the 7 surprises. First, I'll read the surface understanding, followed by what that means in practice. To see this chart, you can look at the PDF located on the last disc of this audio book. Our surface understanding, she needs to feel loved. What that means in practice, even if your relationship is great, your mate likely has a fundamental insecurity about your love, and when that insecurity is triggered, she may respond in ways that confuse or upset you, until she feels reassured. Our surface understanding, women are emotional. What that means in practice? Women deal with multiple thoughts and emotions from their past and present all the time, at the same time, and these can't be easily dismissed. Our surface understanding, she's impossible to figure out. What that means in practice? There is usually a logical reason behind her baffling words or actions, and behavior that confuses or frustrates you often signals a need she is asking you to meet. Our surface understanding. Women want security. In other words, financial security. What that means in practice? Your woman needs emotional security and closeness with you so much that she will endure financial insecurity to get it. Our surface understanding? She doesn't want you to fix it. She just wants you to listen. What that means in practice? When she is sharing an emotional problem, her feelings and her desire to be heard are much more important than the problem itself. Our surface understanding, she doesn't want sex much, which means she must not want me. What that means in practice, physically, women tend to crave sex less often than men do, and it is usually not related to your desirability. our surface understanding, she wants to look attractive. What that means in practice? Inside your smart, secure wife lives a little girl who deeply needs to know that you find her beautiful and that you only have eyes for her. How we found out. Our methodology. In our initial research for this book, Shaunti and I worked for a year to identify inner map terrain areas that are common to most women, but that most guys tend not to understand. Besides conducting hundreds of in-person interviews, we gathered huge amounts of anecdotal information at dozens of women's events where Shaunti was presenting materials from For Women Only. I spoke with stay-at-home moms, business owners, and secretaries, and on airplanes, in focus groups, and over Shaunti's book table while she was being mobbed at women's conferences. I sifted through hundreds of emails and forum postings from Shaunti's ForWomenOnlyBook.com website. In all these venues, I was really just the embedded male, like the reporters who rode with the armored cavalry divisions at the opening of the Iraq War. I kept my helmet on, my head down, and my notebook handy. After all that research, we did a scientific, nationally representative survey. As Shaunti had done with her previous book, we worked with survey design expert Chuck Cowan, a former chief of census design for the U.S. Census Bureau, and the well-respected survey company Decision Analyst. They came together to help us design and conduct a groundbreaking survey of 400 women from all over the country. Since then, we've done other surveys. Adding it all up, well over 6,000 women provided input for this book. I know you'll be fascinated by the results. While some of the findings may be challenging or difficult to accept, most men have been surprised by how helpful many of these truths are and how simple they are to implement and for a better, easier relationship, a happy wife or girlfriend, and more peace in their home. The Map Key. Before we tackle the findings, here are some pointers on reading the map. This book holds to a biblical worldview. Our aim is to be relevant and revealing, no matter what your worldview is, and we surveyed women regardless of cultural background or religious beliefs. But thousands of churches now require our books before a couple gets married, and because Shaunti and I view life through our Christian faith, we've seen that these findings are consistent with biblical principles. We believe that relationships are most fulfilling when both people have a common commitment to serving Jesus. Since our focus is on what we learn through the research, we don't quote heavily from Scripture, but we draw from and reference it as the only dependable guidebook for relationships. This is not a comprehensive marriage book. Since there are already many great marriage books on the market, there's no need to cover topics that other experts can tackle far better than we can, or that guys already have a good handle on. We list several recommended resources at our website, ForMenOnlyBook.com. Instead, we focus specifically on high-leverage surprises, truths that we don't tend to get, where small, simple changes can have huge impacts. Also, while our content is probably a bit more targeted toward married men, these insights will be helpful for any male-female relationship. That said, if your relationship is seriously on the rocks, this little book will probably open your eyes in some important areas, but it's not designed to cover a crisis situation. We encourage you to get the kind of counsel and support your marriage deserves. This is not an equal treatment. Just as For Women Only was intentionally one-sided, and if your wife read it, you may have benefited from that fact. So is this book. Yes, you have needs too, and there certainly may be relationship issues arising because she doesn't understand you, but For Women Only addresses many of those, and this book is not about them. This is only about the inner lives of women, and we're focusing entirely on how men can relate to women, not the other way around. That's also why the survey polled only heterosexual women. There are exceptions to every rule. Recognize that when I say most women appear to think a certain way, most does not mean all. We make generalizations out of necessity to be helpful in the widest number of circumstances. Inevitably, there will be exceptions. Statistically, in fact, it's likely that some male readers will think in a way similar to their wives in one area or another. Everyone is an individual, so the goal is to have your eyes open for what is most important in your situation. Our findings may not be politically correct, but we try to be true to the evidence. For 6 years, Shaunti was a newspaper columnist on women's issues, and she sometimes received emails from women complaining that she was doing exactly what we intend to do with this book, making generalizations about women. Add the fact that I, as a guy, am daring to make those generalizations, and we recognize the potential for controversy. We don't quite know how to get around that, so we decided to just report what we learned. The thing to do next. We think that in the material ahead, you're going to receive a lot of promising invitations to try some new things. Most are incredibly simple, but they may not come naturally. Of course, if all this was already instinctive to you, then you wouldn't be troubled by randomness, confusion, or frustration. And did I mention swamps? My encouragement to you, give the process time as you retrain years of incorrect assumptions and counterproductive reactions. Bring a humble attitude. Be willing to practice. Believe it can be done, because I've learned that it can be. After several months as an embedded male, I was watching a movie with Shaunti one night. Halfway through, I casually mentioned that I didn't like the way one of the female characters was treating another. Shaunti sat up on the couch, grinned, and said, "You're thinking like a girl." Now, she meant it as high praise, but in the small Midwestern town where I grew up, that kind of talk could have gotten a guy slugged. But then I realized, maybe I had learned a valuable thing or two about the female universe just by listening in. Here's hoping that you do that too.